3 million years ago, when the very first groups of humans started showing up on Earth, our main character was one of them. At first glance, he looked just like any normal Austropax, but there was definitely something different about him, something that made him stand out from everyone else. His obsession with hunting was on a completely different level. Even so, the main character believed he was just like everybody else. But pretty soon he realized something was seriously off about him. While the people around him slowly grew old, became weaker, and eventually died, he never died, bro. No matter what happened, whether it was disease, an accident, or an attack from a wild animal, nothing could harm him. Time kept moving forward. Generations came and went, but he remained exactly the same. Well, not completely the same. His body kept growing bigger, more muscular, and more powerful. Throughout this never-ending timeline, hunting, fighting, and battling any worthy enemy became the sole purpose of his life. The curse of immortality and the unbearable pain of loneliness were his only true companions. And strangely enough, they were also the only things that brought him comfort. For nearly 3 million years, he lived like this. Every single day, his body underwent new evolution. His strength kept reaching higher and higher levels. Then one day, he reached a point where absolutely nobody could match his power. People started calling him the God of Earth. His power became so insanely extreme that he defeated all the other gods and claimed the title of the most powerful being in the divine realm. But then the story took a twist. There was no one left who could challenge him anymore. The days once filled with thrill and excitement had turned into a never-ending cycle of boredom. To vent his frustration, Mar casually lifted his foot one day and slammed it into the ground. The divine realm, which was basically like a mini planet, shook violently from the impact. And that was only the beginning. The entire divine world literally entered earthquake mode. Every god, angel, and even the demons living inside it started trembling in fear. Of course, this was not the first time Mar had pulled a stunt like this, but now there were some gods who had become completely fed up with these daily tremors. One of them was Lucifer, the second most powerful god in the divine realm. Mar, who was now completely consumed by boredom, acted as if he did not care about the destruction at all. His mind was focused on only one thought. He had defeated every worthy opponent without even trying, and it had been more than 1,000 years since anyone had genuinely challenged him. Now all he wanted was for anyone to give him a reason to fight again. Letting out a deep sigh, Mar muttered to himself, "Being too powerful is a problem too, man." The moment those words left his mouth, something suddenly clicked inside his head. After 1,000 years of non-stop frustration, he felt like he had just achieved a genius-level breakthrough. If his strength was the problem, then the solution was right in front of him. He simply needed to find a way to make himself weaker. To him, it seemed totally obvious. If he could live in a weak body like the people on Earth, then he would have hundreds of rivals to fight against. Suddenly, Mar jumped up from his seat and shouted loudly, "Dragonling!" Instantly, a massive dragon appeared in the sky and crashed down onto the ground with a landing that sounded like thunder itself. Its height was at least 5 times greater than the throne of God Mare. It looked super grumpy, like it was not happy about being summoned at all. But honestly, that was just how it always looked. Its glowing eyes clearly showed that this was Dragon Leem, the assistant dragon of the supreme god. After a moment, the dragon's attitude shifted, and with a heavy growl it asked, "Why have I been summoned?" But Mar was completely in chill mode. He casually started walking away from the dragon and calmly said, "Take care of everything after I leave." However, things did not go as smoothly as Mar had imagined. The dragon suddenly made a bold move. It cast the absolute spell and tried to stop God Mu by binding him in place. But the moment Mu turned his head and gave him a side glance filled with anger, everything changed. The dragon's fierce and wild attitude melted away in a single second. He instantly looked terrified and ashamed. Stuttering nervously, he tried to justify himself, saying he never intended any disrespect. But at the very least, Mara should have given some kind of explanation, especially since an important meeting of the gods was about to begin. Mar, however, could not have cared less about that meeting. Without saying another word, he started walking again, dragging the dragon along in chains as if it were absolutely nothing. When his first move failed, Leem instantly switched strategies and pulled out the victim card. With tears in his eyes, he complained that if Mara skipped the meeting, then all the responsibility would fall on him, and he would be stuck dealing with non-stop complaints from the other gods. Mara casually shattered the binding spell like it was nothing more than a spider web. Then he turned toward the dragon and shouted, "I am not going anywhere if you are ready to fight me right now." The moment those words came out, Leem's entire attitude flipped. He immediately realized that dealing with the tantrums of the other gods was way easier than going head-to-head with God Ma. Without wasting a second, he clasped his hands together and said, "Safe journey, sir. May your travel be short and peaceful." Mara gave a slight smile and moved forward toward a floating miniature version of Earth suspended in space. He stretched out his hand and touched the surface of the tiny planet. The instant he did, a thought crossed his mind. Whose body should I enter now? To make the decision easier, he began listening to the prayers and messages being sent to the gods by the people of Earth. Most of them were completely useless and boring, but then one message grabbed his attention instantly. It was a message that questioned his entire existence itself. At first, Mar felt a little irritated, but very quickly he realized something. This was the person whose body he could use to begin his journey all over again. For the first time in 1,000 10,000 years. Mar genuinely felt excited. He had finally discovered the ultimate solution to his endless boredom. But while Mar was extremely happy with his plan, his assistant did not seem nearly as excited. For a few seconds, Mar wondered whether he should leave behind some kind of explanation before departing. Then his full Sigma personality kicked in, and he decided he did not owe anyone an explanation at all. The dragon stood there confused and shocked as Mu casually said goodbye, left everything in his care, and told him to handle whatever happened during his absence. Inside the dragon's heart was a strange mix of worry and disappointment. He finally understood that Mu was sending his soul to Earth while leaving his physical body behind in the divine realm. Panicking, the dragon tried to warn him, if anything happens to your body, then your separated soul will die on Earth too. But Mu had already made up his mind. He was completely convinced that nobody in the divine realm would ever dare harm his body. Who would dare? That was the vibe he carried. Because of that overwhelming confidence, he believed his body would remain perfectly safe. The dragon tried to stop him, but only with words. As always, Mu completely ignored his assistant's concerns and did exactly what he wanted. Without any further explanation, the scene instantly shifted. He was no longer Mu. He was now a completely different person, someone who had just won an intense battle and defeated the demon lord. The feeling of victory was overwhelming, and that person's happiness knew no limits. But this was not real life. It was only the final scene of a video game that had just been completed by a 17-year-old loser named Lee Ho. He was the kind of guy who felt painfully jealous of every video game protagonist. Those lucky heroes who went on crazy adventures and somehow ended up surrounded by massive harems of cute girls. As the ending credits rolled across the screen, Lee let out a heavy sigh. He wished his life could be anything like theirs. Then suddenly he let go of his phone. It slipped from his hand and fell from an incredible height. Within seconds, it smashed into the ground below and shattered into pieces. Now it was obvious why Lee had been standing on the edge of a 3-story building. He had nothing left to live for. He was about to end his life. His body trembled. It was covered in wounds from head to toe. Whispering a bitter goodbye to this cruel and unfair world, he jumped. As he fell, the wind rushed violently past him. Tears filled his eyes as he screamed, "If there is really a God out there somewhere, then this is your chance to prove it. Send me to another world." But before his prayer could be answered, he hit the ground. Blood splattered in every direction. His head slammed directly into the sidewalk. By all logic, Lee should have died right there. But something strange happened. His hand twitched. His chest rose. Suddenly, he took a deep breath as if someone had pulled him back from drowning. He never realized what happened, but Godmust's soul had taken over his body at lightning speed just moments before the impact. Now Mar was forced to experience the pain of Lee's battered and broken body without having any clue what had actually happened. Meanwhile, Lee's soul had already arrived in the divine realm. He stood there completely stunned. His jaw looked like it had literally dropped all the way to the ground. But that was not the only thing shocking Lee. The real shock hit when he looked up and saw a gigantic dragon standing right in front of him, and it very clearly did not look happy. Then again, Lee was not the only one in shock. The dragon was completely frozen too. He never expected to see a human soul arrive in the divine realm this quickly. Just like Lee never expected the first thing he would see after dying to be the staring eyes of an angry-looking dragon. Now let us rewind for a second. Exactly 10 seconds before all this chaos, God Mu was standing there with his iconic smug expression, touching the miniature Earth, completely relaxed and confident. As mentioned before, he had absolutely no regrets about leaving his body behind. Dragonling did everything he could to warn him. He practically begged him to reconsider. But Mar, being reckless as ever, brushed off every warning like dust in the wind. Without wasting even a second, he sent his soul down to Earth and directly swapped places with Lee's soul. And just like that, destiny began writing an entirely new story. What happened next was something nobody could have imagined. The moment Mara's soul entered Lee's body, he instantly realized he had landed in a serious life or death situation. There was no time to adjust, no warning. He was already in the air, falling toward the ground at lightning speed. He had less than a second to understand what was happening. Then it happened. Lee's body slammed into the ground with such brutal force that it was hard to believe any human could survive that kind of impact. It was not just a crash, it was pure destruction. Bones shattered apart. The body bounced like a broken ragdoll before collapsing onto the ground. The pain was more intense than anything Mu had experienced throughout his immortal life. But the real problem was not the pain. The real shock was the confusion. Why? The moment he arrived on Earth, how had everything turned into such a disaster? How had things become this messed up so fast? Nothing made sense. His hands shook uncontrollably. His entire borrowed body was in complete shock. Then suddenly everything became still. His hands stopped moving. In that cold, dead silence, Mar came to a horrifying realization. He was dying. There was no opportunity to change destiny. No time to fix what was broken. His body simply lay there on the cold, merciless ground. Everything felt strangely quiet. There was nobody around to witness the fall of the once proud and powerful god. Nobody to help him, nobody even to see him. But no, this was not the end of Mar. Not yet. As you know, there are certain muscles inside the human body that cannot normally be controlled consciously, like the heart and various internal organs. But Mar had spent 30 million years training his body. He had surpassed every limitation of the human form. His control was so precise that he could consciously manipulate his blood vessels, muscles, and even his organs. That was why within only a few seconds his heart started beating again. Yes, it hurt like crazy, but Mar forcibly pushed blood through his veins, repaired his heart, and stopped the bleeding. Slowly, Quickly, he stood back up as if nothing had happened. Even though the body was still screaming in pain, yet he was not angry. Instead, he felt strangely happy. Beaten, bruised, and covered in blood, he had not experienced such an intense sensation in a very long time. That feeling alone was enough to confirm one thing. Coming here had been the right decision. Now it was time to explore Lee's memories and discover what kind of life this boy had lived. It did not take Mar long to understand the entire story. And once he did, he made plans to head toward Lee's home, which would now become his new base. The only problem was walking. Lee's weak and injured legs made movement difficult, so Mar literally started using his hands like a monkey, crawling forward to maintain balance. Eventually, after some time, he finally reached Lee's house. The first thing he noticed was that a cat had left a pile of poop right outside the window. Great welcome. The house itself was tiny, almost like a basement. Mara sat down on the squeaky bed and started reflecting on Lee's memories. Those memories revealed that Lee had only one male relative, and that person lived very far away. In other words, Lee was completely alone, poor, helpless, and absolutely pathetic. His only real occupation was going to school. The most interesting part came when Mar uncovered a memory from school. There was one boy who bullied Lee day and night as if it were his life's mission. Constant fights, humiliation, and pure torture. For Mara, this was a perfect starting point, full of pain and potential. He could not have been more thrilled. Overflowing with excitement, Mara threw a random punch into the air. Instantly, a sharp, piercing pain shot through his hand.